class, which is titled The Leader as Coach, Moving Beyond Giving Advice to Real Impact. So my name is Frances Sadi, and I am the Associate Director of Non-Degree Programs here at Brown University's School of Professional Studies. Here at Brown's School of Professional Studies, we work with leaders across industries who are navigating complexity, growth, and increasing responsibility. And time over time, many leaders report back to us that they find themselves becoming the default problem solver in the room. And that strength often fuels a leader's success. It can build credibility, it signals competence, and it can often get results. But two challenges tend to emerge. First, when leaders constantly step in to solve, it can unintentionally limit ownership, reduce learning, and keep capable people dependent longer than necessary. And second, in today's fast-moving, information-rich, constantly evolving workplace, it's no longer realistic for any one leader to have all of the answers. The complexity simply exceeds individual expertise. So then the question becomes, what kind of leadership builds capability in others while also responding to increasing complexity? And what shifts when a leader moves from being the answer giver to becoming the thinking partner? And so that is the exploration that we're stepping into today. Here at Brown, we are proud to partner with ACT Leadership, a globally respected firm for helping leaders expand their capacity through coaching, adult development, and systems thinking. So together with ACT, we've co-developed the Leader as Coach program to help professionals such as yourselves to strengthen your ability to build capability, accountability, and trust through everyday conversations. And so today we're going to make that shift visible. And so I am honored to introduce our lead faculty for this session. So Erin Hutchins is the co-founder of ACT Leadership and a seasoned executive coach who has worked with leaders across sectors to help them evolve how they think, lead, and relate. Erin brings decades of experience in adult development and leadership transformation, and she'll be guiding us through today's framework and demonstration. Supporting our live role play today is Dr. Melissa McDaniels. So Dr. McDaniels is the Associate Executive Director and Scientist at the Center for the Improvement of Mentored Experiences in Research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Melissa brings over 25 years of experience in mentorship, faculty development, and organizational change. And she is also currently a participant in our Leadership and Performance Coaching Certificate Program, or LPCC. Melissa joins us both as an experienced leader and as someone who actively is deepening her coaching practice. So before we begin, just two quick notes. First is that throughout this webinar, we welcome your engagement. So please use the chat and the Q&A features throughout the session. If we can reserve the Q&A for all of your questions, and that would allow us to use the chat for more engagement and feedback throughout the talk. So we will make sure to reserve time at the end of our discussion for live questions from the audience. So please keep those questions coming. And then second, today's webinar is being recorded, so look for an email from us in about a day or two with a link to the recording, and as well as additional information about the Leader as Coach program. So Erin and Melissa, so nice to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everyone online joining us and for investing your time and attention to this conversation. And so to open things up, Erin, I was wondering if I could ask you a question to start. So as I was mentioning earlier, leaders are often really valued for being decisive and having strong answers. From your experience, why is giving advice so compelling for us as leaders? And then what changes when we decide to shift from being the answer giver to the thinking partner?
Great. Thank you, Frank. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
I just want to say hello, everyone. It's great to be with you. I'm outside of the Washington, D.C. area. We don't have as much as snow that Brown has, I can see from Fran's background, but we do have a layer. So hope all of you are keeping warm out there if you're on the East Coast. Okay, so great question, Fran. And I think Fran's question really frames like why we're doing this webinar today to talk about really leader as coach. leadership can mean many different things, but today's focus is what does it look like for that leader to be coach-like?
Mm.
So why are we seeing this topic be so important right now in today's world? And Fran, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to actually share the two slides before we go into the demo.
Sounds
But
good.
first, I want to just give some context. So right now, in today's world, there's so much complexity. Yes, there's so much happening in the world from all different angles, maybe within your organization, external to your organization. And there's a lot of complexity that leaders are having to navigate. Also, you bring in the AI component into it as well, the technical component. So there's a lot of different layers here that leaders are having to navigate. And so when we go into this, when we go deeper, take a deeper dive into complexity, and Fran, maybe now would be a good time to share the slide.
Mhm.
We are curious about how leaders respond to that complexity and to constant changing environments. So I'm going to try to make this webinar interactive with you for the audience that is listening and participating. I'd love for you to interact with me because I want to hear
Mm.
your thoughts, and I'm going to integrate your thoughts into my comments and also in the demo that I'm going to be doing soon. So first of all, let's look at this picture. Like when you first look at this picture, what do you see? And you're welcome to pop your comments in the chat as we go along. So I'm going to share with what I see. It's like I see a real top-down approach around a leadership style of control. Yeah. And so the research shows us when we are under pressure and we're faced with complexity, our natural state is to want to control the outcomes. And we do that by trying to fix things and give advice and to make things better. Ultimately, because we want things to be better, our natural default response as leaders is to then go into wanting to problem solve, give advice, fix it, make it better. Let's get to results.
Mm.
Yeah. I think a lot of us as leaders can really empathize with that. You know, the pressure to perform, the pressure to get results, especially in today's world where the demand for results, it's even like do it faster, do it quicker every single day. So, what do I want to say about this? So, what happens in more of a command control environment, or we're in that command control place, we end up being in a reactive state.
Mm.
We end up going into a reactive state. So, from a neuroscience perspective, if you're curious around the brain science behind it, we end up going into reacting from a fight, flight, or freeze state. And we use the part of the brain, the back of the brain, the amygdala, which regulates our emotions, to respond. And usually our response is coming from a reactive place, which is how do I fix this? How do I respond in a way that's going to get quick results? And that is typically for most of us our default response. So, and the research actually shows too that 75% of leaders are operating from this place of reactive leadership or a control-based leadership style. So, um, if you're in this type of environment, and this is, and I think all of us can see this within ourselves as well, it's it's sort of that default response to go into want to take control and want to do something about it. So, Fran, if you could go to the next slide. So I'm curious, Fran's about to put a poll up. So before I go into more context about this, I would love if you could take a moment, and I'm going to look at the chat box in a moment and see if there's any comments. But I'd love for you to fill us out around when you feel under pressure as a leader, what's your first instinct? Okay, so take a moment if you can just put your answer here.
Great. As those answers are coming in, feel free to, as Erin said, to add your thoughts on this to the chat, maybe your own experiences with this dynamic. or if there's additional layers that maybe weren't in that graphic that came to mind.
And we understand that pressure can show up differently in different contexts. So just using like your instinctual response, your instincts here, just give what your sort of quick reaction is to this question.
We've got just about 65% complete. I'm going to just wait another 30 seconds or so, see if we can get up to about 75%.
Great. Okay.
And there are a few chat messages in the chat, Erin.
Yep.
If anyone's joining late, no worries at all. We're glad to have you here. We are recording this session and we'll put it up on our YouTube playlist that will be shared by an email after this conversation in the next day or two. So you can watch the full recording then.
And I appreciate your responses in the chat. Thank you. If you all want to turn your attention there too.
Mhm.
Okay, so once we have the results here, I'd like
Yeah,
to,
we're at 75. I'm happy to close it in like
yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll and share it.
Okay,
And
great. So the question here was, when you feel under pressure as a leader, what's your first instinct? 23% say solve it yourself, make a decision. 36 say offer a solution or suggest to help them. Yes, of course you would. 32% ask for their take but steer the decision. Great. 9% say get curious and let it then think it through. And 0% say ignore other, which is what else would you do? Ignore it, maybe hope for it to go away.
hmm,
So great. And these are all, again, um, just normal reactions as human beings, as a leaders around how we would approach a challenge or situation when we're under pressure.
hmm.
So a little bit more context, and then I want to segue to the demo here. Um, why why is advice so common right now in leadership? Well, leaders rise through expertise. Think about it too. Like if you're in an organization and a certain leader has technical expertise, but they might not have the leadership skills, a lot of times organizations really promote through technical expertise. Also, speed and decisiveness are rewarded. So people who can get quicker results and that are contributing, to the bottom line, possibly, are rewarded for that. Advice feels efficient. It feels good. It also creates short-term clarity for someone, especially if you feel helpless with what to do. It's like, oh, okay, now if someone's giving me advice, it opens up a channel for me to take action on, you know? So taking action might feel good. The hidden cost of that, which we're going to explore further, is that it can limit ownership to that person of actually owning the solution that they've created. It can reduce their own time to really think through it more critically, to solve it for themselves. It keeps teams, it keeps leaders dependent on looking for the answer from their boss or looking for the answer from someone besides themselves.
Mhm.
Yep, and it increases also workload. If you're taking on other people's problems all the time, then you're taking on a lot more. And this is after doing executive coaching for many, many, many years. This is what the number one topic that I coach leaders on is that people have
Mhm.
taking on too much and feeling overwhelmed. So let's address that now. So thank you very much for Melissa for joining us today to do the demo with us. We're going to do something experiential together. We are going to demo what a traditional, maybe advice giving conversation looks like. If Melissa's going to come to us with utilizing her life experience and bringing a challenge through her life experience. And I'm going to help her through a conversation of giving her my default brain response of how I would help her. And then I want to hear from you all too around how might you help Melissa. And then I want to segue into a coach-like conversation so you all can see the distinction here. And then afterwards, we'll talk about it and we'll talk about what you saw, the differences, and how you might adopt a coach approach. Okay, so well, thank you again, Melissa, for joining us. Why don't you share a little bit of your challenge that you're sourcing from your life experience and your work experience, And we're going to utilize that in the demo. And also, just for those that are on the call, Melissa is being herself. She is being authentic as possible within this context around this particular challenge. So I've really asked her to show up as her today and not as where she is having to play a part. Okay. So Melissa, why don't you share share with the audience a little bit about the topic here that you want to talk about?
Thank you, Erin, and the opportunity to be coached today. So, I have a person on my team who's been historically a really high performer. And about 9 months ago, I gave them a raise to sort of recognize that, but also to communicate we are really hoping for to see a next stage in leadership in them. And then, really, over the past month or so, they started to miss some key deadlines. And fortunately, it hasn't impacted our clients. But one of the things that I've seen and gotten the feedback from other colleagues is that impacted other colleagues and team members who are trying to get their part of the project done. um, I've had to remind Alex of some of the things they've missed, as well as had to step in to do some of the work and also take the time to meet directly with staff who wanted to complain about the balls being dropped. And so I really don't want Alex to fail, especially as they try to be in a more of a stretch role. But I also just cannot keep doing a part of the work and trying to pick up the balls. And I think it's only a matter of time before our customers will feel the impact. So I'm just feeling stuck about what to do, Erin.
Thank you, Melissa. And for those that are observing and listening, I'm going to approach her because this is a coach-like conversation. I'm going to approach her like I'm a leader in the organization here and in the conversation. Okay. Also, I would love for you all to be popping in your default response to Melissa's challenge around if she asked you this question, she was someone in your organization or in the context you're working with, how would you respond? So go ahead and pop it in so I can use some of your responses with Melissa. Okay, so we're going to spend a few minutes and then we'll segue to a different approach. So Melissa, my immediate response is like, oh my gosh, I've been through this. I know this. I have been through this. Being a leader within an organization for 15 years, I know what this feels like.
It feels good to be seen. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know. And I actually really genuinely want to give you a lot of advice here around what to do and not to do. So, have you tried putting this person on a PIP, on a performance improvement plan? Like, have you tried to communicate where they're, I know you mentioned you gave them feedback, but have you actually made it a formalized feedback process?
Wow. I actually hadn't thought of that. And that feels maybe a couple steps ahead of things, but no. So the answer is no. Maybe I should be. Maybe I've been a little bit too casual. So thanks for that input.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I'm going to try something like if I'm taking this on as my own problem now, well, here's what I think that we need to do. I think that we need to, really put a plan in place for this person and really think about how they're impacting the organization.
Okay. I could draft something. Would you be willing to review that if I sort of draft a plan that I could start to implement?
Yeah, I definitely want to have input into it because I think it really, I think we can do it together and figure out how this gets communicated out to this person.
Thank you for your partnership. It makes me feel relieved. Thank you.
Okay. So that was an example of me taking it on in the situation and making it also then putting it as also a challenge that I'm going to now have to interact with. I'm going to use a couple from the chat box. Do they have does this person have an understanding of how they're impacting their coworkers?
You know, if I'm honest, not yet. And so I think a lot of what has been caused is sort of people saying things to me directly, people talking amongst each other. But that's one of the things that I think is really important to help this person understand how it's been impacting them, the other people. And I just don't know how to broach that conversation.
Yeah. Here's another one from the chat. This must feel really difficult. What are some steps that you've taken to address this issue?
Yeah, a couple things. Um, since it's happened, we have our hour meeting every week, and I've sat down and tried to point out, some of these balls that have been dropped, and I've asked questions like, "What type of support do you need for this not to happen?" I have also offered, I said, look, if you're feeling overwhelmed with volume of work, let me take this piece on now. It won't be forever, but I'll take this piece on now and then maybe hand it back to you when things have become, the pressure has reduced.
Okay. Okay. And then last one from the chat, and then we're going to switch. And for everybody observing, notice how these questions are really focused on the issue. Okay. We're really focused on the issue of solving this. Can you please, can you try them out with some new responsibilities and see if they meet the new goals consistently?
Um, I think I can. I think what that means is I've been making the assumption that, hey, they would obviously know what this higher level of leadership looks like. So I think maybe I need to be more explicit about the behaviors and lay that out and say, I would like you to try these things or etc. So I guess I could do that. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm noticing, so you're kind of saying, I guess, like you're receiving a lot of advice around what you could do or have you tried, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that
And it
impacting you?
yeah, honestly, it feels like everything you said. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. It's a little overwhelming, to be quite honest with you.
Okay. All right. So thank you for the first part in there of trying out these different methods um, of being able to for us to try on giving you advice in this situation. We're going to segue now to a coach-like conversation, and I would like the observers now to focus on where is my focus in this conversation.
And actually, Erin, if you're up for me posting that one poll, it gives some feedback on how the audience felt like the conversation went. It's two
Great.
questions and super quick. So,
Sure, let's do it. Let's hear from the audience around how it went before we segue.
okay, so here it is. So there's two questions. The first one is, after this first conversation, how likely is it that Melissa will continue stepping in to fix Alex's work? Very likely, somewhat likely, not very likely, or not sure. And then the second question is, after the conversation, who is primarily responsible for improving Alex's performance? Is it Melissa? Is it Alex? Is it shared equally, or was it unclear? And so we'll just go maybe another 10 seconds, and then I can close the poll. Okay. Almost there. I want to not cut people off midway. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Ending the poll. Here's the results for the first one. So as far as how likely it is that Melissa will continue to step in to fix Alex's work, it looks like very likely to somewhat likely, about 85% weighed in there. And then after the conversation, who's primarily responsible? This one was pretty spread equally, but with Alex really being the lowest. 15% said Alex is responsible for improving their performance. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you. That's insightful. And so now, as we turn our attention to being a coach-like, to having a coach-like conversation, again, focus your attention on what am I doing as a coach-like leader, and where is my focus? Is my focus on the issue at hand, or is my focus on something else? So afterwards, I would love to hear from you around where my focus was and maybe what I was doing. Okay, so Melissa, let's go. Let's rewind again and
Let's
go
do
back.
it. Rewind.
Let's go back to you. So
Okay.
I'm gonna maybe if you could just give 30 seconds again of reiterating what the challenge is.
Yeah. So again, the challenge is I have a team member who is not stepping up in some leadership in ways that I hope they could, but the result is they're dropping some balls. I'm having to sort of manage their own what should be their self-management. I'm having to pick up some other work. And maybe most importantly, it's impacting others on the team. And I'm having to field a lot of complaints and that sort of thing. So it's just added to an already full plate that I have. And it's a real it's disappointing and it's a real challenge.
And from this conversation, what would be helpful for you to get out of this conversation?
Ah, wow. Thank you for asking that question. What I would like to have at the end of the conversation is maybe a little bit more perspective about what my job is and what their job is, and maybe a strategy or two moving forward to get us sort of recentered on the right track, I think.
Okay. So I'm sensing from when you were describing the situation that you seemed somewhat frustration, like you seemed frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm frustrated and disappointed that this is happening. I'm also feeling a little bit ashamed about like my leadership style. Like, oh my gosh, like what have I done or not done to empower this person to succeed? So there's a couple sort of big feelings around that.
Yeah, and how would you like to be relating to this situation?
I would like to feel um, empowered. I would like to feel really excited to support my colleague in succeeding. So I take a lot of pride in supporting the development of my colleagues. And I would like the balls being dropped not to be dropped. So there's sort of yeah, just for being a little bit as a leader, to be able to be in a more empowered space, try to think about like maybe what I can do to make this person more successful. Because I really, that's a big part of my identity as a leader, to make people successful.
And I noticed, well, first of all, I noticed that you're smiling more, and also you just said part of your identity is to make people successful as a leader, part of your leadership identity. What does it mean to operate from a place of making others successful?
Yeah, it needs to be, can I create conditions where expectations are transparent and explicit, where there's trust, there's a sort of a container for team members to trust each other, and for to be a place where people can make mistakes and ask questions if they're having challenges. So that's sort of again that creating the environment for success to happen, but also not to sweep things under the rug when there's challenges. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what would it look like to what do conditions, and I'm also hearing accountability, responsibility.
Yep.
What does that mean to co-create
Yep.
conditions and accountability in this situation?
It kind of what would it look like? Can I be sort of concrete about that? Is that
Yeah. Yeah. What would it look
yeah?
like?
Um, I think, and I've done this in the past, taking things sort of having an opportunity and creating a space, a meeting time, part of it to step back and say, okay, what's our goal here? What are we trying to do in terms of delivering this product or service? And to sort of step back and actually ask everyone involved, what do you see as your responsibility in this success? So, again, stepping back, trying to give people some ownership of like, hey, what is your role in this? And being able to lay that out and hope, and sometimes people say, oh, guess what? We're seeing some gaps here. How can we collectively solve what ultimately is a systemic problem? So I think, we're moving so fast. And so slowing down a little bit to have some space for reflective conversations about how our system is working together. I think that might be a really important thing to do, to take time at a meeting with folks.
So I'm hearing really asking your team, what does responsibility look like, and how might they be accountable for what they are responsible for?
Yeah, and how does their work impact other team members? I think that could be a natural evolution from that.
Yeah. So, what are you getting from this conversation, if anything, right now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the thing that, being in an environment of constant flux is number one. I need to slow down as a leader. I need to have sort of put some reflective time into how I'm feeling and what my role is. And number two, to also say, I need to provide that time, emphasize that productivity is important, but that's not all it is. So I have to verbally, I think, make clear that the process is as important, if sometimes more important than the content. So I think one, grounding myself in what I know to be true, but then trying to also provide that and encourage that on the part of my team.
You sound clear about that.
I feel really centered and I I know I'm good at my job and I know that under times of stress, which we've had, my vision gets a little smaller and I forget what I know. And so, what's been great about this conversation is a reminder like, hey, you know stuff, and you can do this differently. And that feels really empowering to me, Erin.
Mm. So, action, what's one action you might take from this conversation?
Um, One action is number one. Um, as a leader, I need to do some thinking on my own to like, and this doesn't have to take long, but to map out for myself, okay, what are the different steps of the process? What responsibilities do I think believe that exist and sort of map that out. And then, so that's one thing. And then actually maybe have each of my team members before the next meeting do a little bit of that too. Like, what are our key pillars of through the process, and what is your role in it? And then we can all come together and do that shared process mapping and see where we align and where we don't align. So both again, doing some thinking, creating a map, and then putting the request into my team members.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. I want to say thank you for being you and authentically you in this conversation, and exploring what might be possible for your team and their development in the realm of taking responsibility. So thank you
Well,
for
and I must tell you, the pressure from my chest has reduced tremendously. So, thank you for the opportunity.
you're welcome. Okay. So we're going to pause. I think, Fran, do you have another survey?
Yeah, same two
Okay.
questions. Just we always like to compare, so I'm going to launch that. So again, how likely is it Melissa will continue stepping in to fix Alex's work after that second conversation? And then who in this scenario is primarily responsible for improving Alex's performance? So while we're having those responses come in, I just want to make a plug for submitting any questions you have about this specific masterclass theme and these role plays that we've done with Erin's approach. But also if you have questions about the Leader as Coach program or any of our other coaching offerings, feel free to put those into the chat. I will present briefly on the Leader as Coach, but we want to make sure we get all your questions answered. And so
We have Melissa with us today too, who's a real live person and a leader who's in the coaching program. That if you want to ask her a question specifically about how it's impacted maybe her leadership, she will be on as well.
yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the poll. Thank you for everyone who responded. So closing that in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm going to share the results. So wow, uh, quite stark difference. So for this, how likely is it that Melissa will continue to step in to fix Alex's work? If you remember before, it was 85% in the very likely to somewhat likely, and now it's almost flip-flopped. So it's, let's see, 77% in the not very likely to, not sure where it falls, but significantly skewed in the other direction. And then who is primarily responsible for improving Alex's performance? For this conversation, there was 56% of you said that they really share it equally. And then there was even more emphasis. 35% said Alex is responsible. So let's stop sharing. Thank you again, everyone. And I hand it back to you, Erin, if you want to.
Yes, and I would like to, I know we have a few minutes here. I want to debrief this conversation. And if you all have observations about where my focus was with Melissa, pop them in the chat now so I can utilize that in my debrief. And Fran, if you wouldn't mind just sharing those few slides before so I can help in the debrief, I
Yeah.
want to highlight something. In the second conversation, did you feel like did I have to say a lot as a leader? Like, did you feel like maybe Fran, you were observing, but did you feel like I had to speak a lot?
Well, it was definitely more back and forth. And if anything, it felt more relaxed because it seemed like you were fueled more by curiosity and genuine care for Melissa. And it was less kind of fixated or distracted and focused on the problem, which was real, and for Melissa, very real. But you kind of shifted your focus, it seemed.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I thank you for the responses coming in. I'm seeing that I was maybe this is more of a reflective approach. Um, so here's this graphic kind of sums it up. As leaders and as people, we often tend to focus on the problem. And so when we're focused on the exact problem that somebody gives us, we tend to take on a problem solving approach where we take on the problem ourselves and we then create the responsibility for the problem. Given the first example with Melissa that I used with her, have you tried? Well, here's what worked for me. We're assuming that those responses are going to be good for Melissa in the context that she's working with. So it's kind of based upon an assumption. And the second example, the idea is for the focus to be on the employee or the person that you're working with. The focus is on them with a light touch on the issue at hand. So as a coach like leader, you're focused on how the other person is relating to the topic or their challenge. It seems like a minor distinction, but actually in leadership, it's a big distinction to focus on how the other person is relating to it instead of you focused on the problem itself. So I love this light bulb example because the idea is not for the light bulb to go off in your head to be like, oh my gosh, I have all these things I want to share with you about my experience of working with employees and having issues with performance. That's going off in my head. The idea is how do you empower it for the other person to do their critical thinking, to do the processing so the light bulb goes off in their head, therefore creating a new neural pathway in the brain, a new pathway to open up a new perspective to relate to their issue or challenge in a different conscious way.
Mm.
So just, from that is that the goal here in this program is to help that light bulb go off in someone else's head. And a lot of people might think, well, that could take a while. Well, that conversation was less than 10 minutes. So it's really knowing the questions or how to approach a person to help facilitate their own learning and growth. So if we can just click on the next slide. And this, I was talking about coming from a place of control when we're under pressure. It's shifting from here's what I need to do, here's what I need you to do, or I'll talk to them, it's quicker that way, or I'll take on the problem, or we'll get this sorted today, to a coach approach is like, what's the outcome you're aiming for? What's your part in this? And how do you want to shift, or what do you want to create? What outcome do you want? What would be a good next step? So it's a frame from the control is not within the leader, it's empowering the other person to do their own critical thinking to ultimately own their own solution. And then last slide just really shows the differences here between a fixing or advice giving or controlling stance to a coach-like leadership stance, and showing the distinctions between a fixing mindset and a coach-like leadership mindset.
Mm.
Which we attempted to demonstrate in that demo.
Mm.
And I'm just having a look at the chat, and I want to just bottom line some responses from people. Um, it feels like the likelihood of stepping in is relative to Melissa's self-confidence as a leader. Yes. Focus was on Melissa's feelings, her experience, her words and priorities. Yes. The coaching conversation is about asking reflective questions. Yes. Um, great. I find creating an expectation that this isn't a quick fix is critical. Yes. Seems like Melissa could have said she wanted a quick fix in Aaron's initial question. Yes. So Laura, great. We don't want to assume that they don't want a quick fix, but even asking, hey, do you want a quick fix here? Or would it be helpful to really have a partner to think through this with you? So even that's something as you leaders are you're listening to this, you can implement right now by asking that question. How do you want help? How do you want me to help you in this conversation versus assuming you know how you can be helpful? Okay, so I think I've said enough here. I don't know if we're out of slides, Fran. Can't remember if I
There
have
was
another one.
one more. I'm
Okay.
happy to put it back up, but I appreciate all you shared and recognize also we want to save some time for questions at
Yes.
the end.
Why don't you share a little bit more about the Leaders Coach program, and then we'll save some time for questions for
Yeah, definitely.
audience.
And I will go quickly because I think the demonstration kind of speaks for itself on the effectiveness and the focus of this program. So give me 1 second to bring that up. Can you see the slides okay?
Yes, we can see them.
And actually, just need to do one thing. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm going to try that again. Okay, so the Leader as Coach program, if you visit our website, you'll see that we offer this particular program in two different formats. So this is a program that's designed specifically to allow you to take on and practice and gain these skills for leaders, for managers, and really anyone who kind of works in teams or with others, which as a professional really it includes most of us. So if you visit our website, the program itself is offered in two distinct formats. So we have a 3-day intensive in-person offering, and then we have a 7-week online offering. And the curriculum itself, which I'll touch upon briefly, is the same in both formats. It's really the idea behind having the two different formats. It lets you kind of choose your own adventure per se, where you can select the option that works best for you based off of your own learning style, your needs, as well as what logistically works best for you. So our upcoming online program is going to start up on March 17th. It's going to be Tuesday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you're going to meet for a live online class for those 7 weeks. Whereas for the in-person often, it's a more of an intensive experience. It's 3 days here on our Brown University campus in Providence, Rhode Island. And so that's going to run from Wednesday, April 15th to Friday, April 17th. And so you'll find these exact dates. I can put a link to our online program webpage so you can read more about it, and the details are there. But I did just wanted to briefly just kind of give you a preview to what the curriculum and what rich content is covered in those 7 modules. So again, the content is the same in both formats. So there's 7 distinct modules, and the first is coaching foundation. So this is where you're going to be able to learn why coaching matters and how to create safety and trust within your team. You'll also learn the difference between coaching and mentoring, and begin to be able to build a coach-like mindset to get ready for the rest of the program. Then in module 2, you're going to focus on active listening and questions. So you'll develop the skills to truly listen and ask questions that drive deeper understanding. This was one of my favorite modules that we went through, as an individual often asks kind of focuses and asks more directive questions or more yes and no questions, being able to practice the skill. And I really believe it's an art of question asking and have more open-ended questions, as Erin did in that second example. It really can lead to a much more robust and rich conversation. And then in module 3, you're going to learn concrete coaching skills and then begin to master the structure of a coach-like conversation. And then by module 4, you'll actually be invited to take a step back and think about your values and your purpose. And then by doing that, you're actually going to be able to make sure that when you are engaging in a coach-like conversation, that you can remain grounded in what those values are, both your individual values, but also what your organization's values are and what the intent of the conversation is. To kind of keep things simple and have that at the forefront really allows you to steer your conversation and be less reactive. And speaking of reactivity, by module 5, the focus is reactive to creative. So in this module, it helps participants identify when you or the colleague that you're engaging with is operating kind of more from a survival mode where you're going to be more reactive and less kind of thoughtful or intention or creative. So it provides tools when you to recognize when you're in that mindset, but also tools to be able to shift out of reactivity and into that more creative problem solving framework. And then in the last 2 modules, you'll focus on sustainment, application, and integration, which is hugely important for courses like this. So often we can digest information and then not really do anything with it. And one of the things I love about this program is that even throughout the program itself, you're going to be practicing what you're learning. And then there are specific modules at the end that really allow you to intentionally carry it forward into your work life and personal life as well. So a bit about the outcomes, and I know we're running short on time. So real quick, by the end of the program, you'll be able to be multidimensional leadership skills tailored for today's fast-changing, complex workplace, the ability to build trust and lead more meaningful interactions, to have practical techniques to empower, motivate, and engage your team, just like Erin and Melissa demonstrated, and then strategies to navigate uncertainty with greater clarity and confidence. And then I'm going to drop into the link this registration link so you can check out the program details. And we also are offering a limited discount for 15% for those of you who are joined us live. You can use this discount code to receive that, and it's good for the next few days, so up until the end of the week. And I think that's it on my end. We can make a plug for this later. I know, Melissa, you could speak to your experience in the LPCC program as well, but we'll do that maybe at the end as we have time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over back to both of you, and we can answer questions from the audience.
There's a question from the in the Q&A I can answer now, and then there's also some coming in the chat box we can look at, and then Melissa, I want to also offer you to respond as well. The question in the Q&A is, it sounds from the conversation that the leader as coach may not always know the right answer to an issue while guiding the questions. Would you say that's true? So yes, so the leader as coach doesn't necessarily know, we want to assume when we take on that we know the answer, it limits the creative process to really find the best solution. And so the leader as coach is really asking questions, not guiding, but asking questions to partner with someone to help them do their own thinking about how they want to approach a situation or a challenge. So that ultimately it takes ownership with the other person. Where leaders coach might not make sense is if someone has a technical issue that they come to you with and they have technical expertise in that area or expertise in that area where they need a quick turnaround, it might not be the right time to have a leader as coach conversation. Really context is important here around how do you help someone really do some deeper, more critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some questions in the chat. Melissa, I know you wanted to respond to a couple of them. Do you want to do that now?
I'd be happy to. I think there was a great question from, is it Chafelu, if they are still here. And it says, it seems like Melissa is already familiar with the coaching approach and comfortable with it. What are your suggestions for working with someone who isn't familiar with the coaching style and are coming into the conversation looking for a quick fix? I would just like to say that actually, I would say more of my experience. So if you looked at me 15 years ago, I may have been really wanting a quick, looking for a quick fix. So I actually think it's less of an influence of being familiar with the coaching model as truly being able to be responsive to a different set of questions that Aaron posed. Again, even when you're familiar with coaching, you know, I can jump into advice giving or, so I think it's not an artifact of being familiar with the coaching approach, but I thought it was a really great question and I wanted to respond to that.
Melissa.
Yeah, and I'll just say that getting into the space for me was about expanding my toolkit in being a leader and a manager. And I think, Aaron, you're so right. Like there are some times where more directive work needs to happen. When you're in certain emergency situations, I think leader is coach is a framework to influence, hopefully over time, how you approach conversations in the development of employees. So you're not sort of in that space all the time. If someone is, awesome. I'm not. But I think it's choice. So much of what ACT is about building awareness and having more choices. And so that's how I see having the leader as coach framework as supporting me and my team.
Mm-hmm. Building on what Melissa's saying, because I think it's so important and critical, even if you're trying to make a decision as this program is right for you, it's expanding your capacity to have choice. I want to underscore what Melissa said. So you know that there's different ways to approach people versus our default responses and ways of helping people without assuming we know the right way. And so it's being able to create new neural pathways in the brain to say, oh, there might be a different, more sustainable way of approaching this problem that's ultimately going to lead to that person creating ownership within themselves and ultimately helping a pattern that you might see in that person, helping that really become work towards transforming that for somebody transforming that for themselves, ultimately.
And Aaron, can I just jump in again? I think, as someone who has been led and managed, there are some times where I truly don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I have not encountered this. I don't understand a policy. I need the advice. And that's okay to be in that space. That might not be the time for the leader as coach questions. So I just wanted to be clear that, however, over time, I've been really fortunate to have great leaders who've really, when I've tried to get some specific advice, they say, well, I can wait a second. I could give you some advice, but I want to have you think through this so you can own some of that decision making. So I just wanted to add that, Aaron.
Thank you. Fran, are you seeing it? I know there's a few other questions in the chat that are specific to the programs. Do you want to address those?
One question that came up, and I think this is a perfect time, is just I wonder if, and Melissa, maybe you might be the best person to speak to this, but tell us more about the LPCC certificate program versus this short course, this leader as coach course, and who might be the right candidate for either. I know we've had several people who actually go through LAC, and then afterwards are like, you know what, this is awesome, and I want to take that next step towards LPCC.
And I'm happy to help frame that before Melissa answers too, because I know she's going through the LPCC program. But the LAC is really for those who are wanting to integrate coach-like tendencies and conversations into their leadership, everyday leadership. So you might be utilizing it with team members, you might be utilizing it with your colleagues. It's how do you integrate this approach as a leader? The LPCC, which is Leadership and Performance Coaching Certification Program, is teaching to become a leadership performance coach. So that is the goal with that program, is to then coach people one-on-one, where you're more in a formal relationship as a coach and helping them as a coach in a one-on-one conversation. Melissa, do you want to respond from your experience in the program?
Yeah, so I can't speak to the experience in the leader as coach, but I think the difference is exactly what you said. The idea of knowing, hey, there's actually a set of principles and best practices and guidelines, ethical guidelines from the International Coaching Federation and the entire LPCC program. You're constantly going back to how the content of what is being presented or experienced is aligned with those principles. And so it's very bit much learning about a new profession with colleagues who, and there's so many colleagues across the world who've been doing this work. And so it's actually been really interesting to learn from colleagues of mine who actually have been what they called coaching, but are being introduced to, hey, there's actually some broader standards. And so that's what I see as the difference. I can't speak to the Leadership as Coach program, but I don't know, Erin, if that helps, or Francis.
Definitely. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Just have a few minutes left. Anything else that you wanted to share or touch upon, or if there's more questions coming in, we can check. We got that one.
I would be happy to answer. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Melissa.
No, and if anyone had any questions, so again, part of my goal in coming in here to the program was how can I just be a more coach-like leader? And so that was one of my goals. So if anyone has any questions about, all right, Melissa, what does this look like in practice? Feel free to throw questions back.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to, if I can jump in, something you said, Melissa, during the role play is that, to paraphrase, but basically, when you're stressed out, it's so true. You get that tunnel vision. And one of the things I love about the leader as coach approach is that there, you know, individuals get into leadership positions often for very good reasons. And so just to trust that those individuals have innate resources and knowledge and skills at their disposal, and that sometimes it really is through these conversations that it helps us to kind of take that step back, and to be able to get some space to become more aware of the situation, to have it reflected back to us, and to be reminded of those resources that we have, and to kind of circle back on some of those values and priorities that we've already identified when we weren't stressed out to be able to come back to those. So that is, I've both been on the receiving end of conversations like that, as well as having gone through LAC and using it now in my own professional life. It's just that simple diagram of like, it's not, problems come and go. And if you can work with that individual and see their relationship to the problem that they're experiencing, often that can get you so much farther than jumping into problem solving mode. So yeah, thank you.
And so if you're looking to do that, what Fran has mentioned, come to the program because you'll learn how to unlearn some of your tendencies to then learn how to do that. And we would love to see you and work with you in the program. I know that we're at time now. I want to thank everybody for your participation today.
Yeah.
We love our partnership with Brown. Brown's also very committed to doing these master classes to help you learn out there. And if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out. There's also other testimonials and videos of people who've gone through the program, if you want to hear firsthand of their experience. And thank you to Melissa for joining us today and sharing your experience, being our demo, being in the demo, and also sharing your experience.
Yes, thank
My
you both.
pleasure.
And thank you everyone for making time today. Look for an email from us in the next few days with a link to the recording, as well as some additional information on the programs that we talked about. And we hope to see you in a future class. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.